Hey there everybody, this is Mr. Sparrowhawk. Going to be showing you how to put together a clarinet. This is for beginners that are just starting out and they've not learned how to do this yet, or they've only seen maybe somebody do it one time and are at home and need to see it again, because these are delicate instruments, and they're easy to damage if you're not sure how to do it the right way. So we're just gonna take it slowly and make sure that we understand how to do this before we do too much playing, okay? So the first thing you want to do is, I'll go over a few extra things, by the way, in this video on sort of regular habits of clarinet players and taking care of reeds and things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about those as well, in addition to putting this together. So you take a clarinet. First thing you're going to want to do is find, there's usually a label or a brand name of the clarinet, or of the whatever type of case it's in, will be the top, okay, and then the bottom will not have anything. If you have nothing on the top, then look for which side the handle is connected to, and that's pretty much always the bottom. So you want to position it to where it's sitting on the bottom, and then when you open it, you won't have problems with the clarinet maybe coming out of the molding that's inside. If it comes out of the molding and then the case gets pushed down on top of it again, like I've seen happen when people try to open it this way, it'll sort of fall down into the case, out of the molding, and then the case gets pushed back together, and then it squishes the keys and they get bent. And just like when they get bent, they don't cover up the holes all the way. So then, just like on recorder, the notes come out sounding really strange. So probably even more strange on a clarinet. So so you position it this way, bottom on bottom, top on top. Undo the straps. When you open it up, you're going to see a lot of different pieces inside, and there may be some accessories in there that if you don't see them, you can purchase these at most stores that sell or rent musical instruments. So that's a good route to go with that. So we're going to start out by putting our mouthpiece together. And this is probably the most important part of all of the pieces in terms of how you put it together, because if this isn't put together the right way, this is where the air first goes, and it's actually the part that produces the sound. That as that sound travels through the clarinet, comes out sounding like a clarinet. But if this isn't working, then the whole thing doesn't work. So this is kind of where the first part that has to be correct in order to make any sound at all, okay? So you may have a case on the outside of it, so there's a black sort of a sheath that comes off, and we don't really need that for anything, so you can put that back in the case in the mouthpiece holder spot if you want. And you should have a ligature, which is this silver part that is loose and comes separate. Okay, don't take it off just yet. I'm going to show you how it goes, but it does come off. And then there's just a mouthpiece part, which has cork at the bottom and plastic, right? So notice that a couple things before we start taking this apart, that there is a shape to it. And if you look at it like this, it's more narrow at the top than it is at the bottom. It's more wide at the bottom, okay? And that's important to remember. This ligature also is shaped that way. So if you take it off and look at it, you'll notice that at the bottom it's wider than at the top. And it's not super noticeable, but you need to notice that, because when you put it on, it has to go on that way. You can't put it on upside down. It's not going to work properly. This is what holds your reed on the mouthpiece, okay? And so the reed is the thing that vibrates, that makes the sound, okay? And it starts the sound out to travel through the clarinet, like I said, and come out with that sort of characteristic sound of a clarinet. So looking for my reeds, you do need to try to have extra reeds, okay? It's really good idea if you can buy a box of reeds. This was a box of 10 Van Doren reeds. I use Van Doren. You can use Van Doren, or Rico is decent. I tend to go with 2.5s, but some beginners, it helps to start with a 2. And then as soon as possible, I want you to move up to a 2.5, because the 2s are good to get your first sound, but I think 2.5s generally are going to work a little bit better as you get more used to making the sound, once you start getting the sound out. So really, once you start playing a few notes, you're going to be ready to move up to 2.5 reeds, okay, almost immediately. So maybe by like 1 or 2 reeds if you need to, but you could even start on the 2.5s if you're if you're lucky. Some people may have a little bit harder time, but there are ways around it, okay? What I'm going to do before I put anything else together is I tend to, you want to start out by wetting your reeds, okay? So you get your reed out. I have several reeds here, and what I would normally do when I'm playing is have 2 reeds working at a time. So I would actually get 2. So you may just have 1, so you can just start with 1. But, and then mark them with a pencil or a pen. Down on the part, when you pull them out of the little sheath, there's a part that's cut, and then at the bottom where it's thicker, it's not cut, and you can kind of see the bamboo over on this side, right? So what you're going to do is you're gonna on that bamboo part put a number, like a 1 or a 2, and then keep track of which is which, and you'll find that like some reeds don't work as well, so you may pull it out and it's just that particular reed for whatever reason wasn't cut well, or is too, it's got a knotty part of the wood or something like that that's just preventing it from working somehow. So so it's a good idea to have 2, because if you have one of those and you're finding after a few days that it never is the reed that you like to use, because maybe it's harder to make a sound or just doesn't sound right, then get rid of it, okay, after a few days, and start a new one and get another reed happening. But always have 2, okay? The other thing that happens is these break, and if this gets damaged or chipped or cracked or anything at all, then it's useless, really. It's not going to work. It's not going to get a good sound at all, for sure. You might be able to get a sound, but it's probably not going to be a good sound. So there's a couple things about this reed. I was going to say, normally, if you don't have what I have a little glass here. It's a little square glass that I like to use for reeds, because I can set several reeds in there. This actually has a little bit too much water, so I'm going to get rid of some of the water. It's good to rinse out before you play anyway. But you're going to want to you're going to want to put the cut part inside the water so that it's soaking into the wood, okay? Water soaks into wood naturally, and so you're going to have it in there to get it wet. And when it's wet and it's got water soaked inside it a little bit, it's going to vibrate better. It's going to be easier to play. So I'm going to put mine in here so that I can talk and explain the rest. What you would do is put yours in your mouth, and hopefully you've rinsed out since the last time you've eaten really well, so that you don't have food in your breath, because if you breathe, then there's food particles in your breath. So all that goes onto your reed. So you always want to rinse out. But while you're putting everything else together, you would keep it in your mouth to let it get wet and let that moisture soak in, okay? So the rest of it, we're going to just put the rest of it together. We'll talk about how this holds the reed on when we get to it, but we're going to make sure that the thick part or the wide part is on bottom, just like the mouthpiece, and that it goes on that way. There is a flat side to this mouthpiece, okay, and there's sort of a hole in that part there. So what's going to happen is the screws, and right the seam of the ligature here where the screws are, that's going to be on top of that flat part. That flat part is actually where the reed will go eventually, okay? So we'll get to that in a little bit. So we're going to set that down. We have that put together. Next thing, we're going to pull out we're going to go and pull out the pieces with the keys on them, okay? Again, you're going to make note of which way the keys are facing on this particular instrument. My keys are sort of on this left side for me. So from my direction that I'm looking at it, it's the left. So I'm going to pull out the shorter of the 2 pieces, okay? And this is the top part of your clarinet. And there's usually a label up here on the front of it. And then you're going to notice that there are 3 holes. 2 of them have keys above them, so there's holes there. And then there's this hole by itself. And those are where your left hand fingers are going to go, the 1, 2, and 3, just like on a recorder. And there is a hole in the back also with a key where your thumb will go, okay? For the clarinet, that's your left hand. So this is the top piece, all right, that we're going to put together. Now what I want you to notice about that top piece is down in the bottom here, where eventually we've got these 4 keys that are all sort of teardrop shaped in a row here, and they stick out a little bit, okay? Underneath those, there's this little flap, okay? When you take that flap and move it with your finger up and down, you're going to notice that a key moves in the front, and it's actually where your middle finger goes, okay? So it's this key right here. So if I'm pushing that key down, you can see that that piece comes up and down. And we want it up because that gets it away from this cork. And this cork is where the bottom piece of the clarinet is going to go. So as I pick up the bottom piece out of the case, the side with lots of keys on it, okay, is going to go there, all right? And what I want to show you is what this little piece here that can move that we were talking about earlier is going to overlap on this, okay? So I'm going to set this one down. I'm being careful to set it in the case the way it was set earlier. So as you're looking at it, again, this has some holes in the bottom. You can see 3 spots there for your right hand fingers to go, and then your pinkies will switch back and forth between these keys, okay? And so the part without cork, that's going to overlap that cork we were just looking at, okay? Now when I look at this on the back, there's a thing for your thumb to rest on, okay? It's not a key, but it enables you to sort of rest some of the weight of the clarinet on your thumb of your right hand, okay? Now right close to that, if you keep going around that thumb key, this piece right here, it doesn't look like a key. Now it can come up, so if I push any of these keys that the holes are located on, any of those at all, this will come up. We don't want that to happen. So when you grab it, you're going to make sure and grab down here where there are not as many keys, and make sure not to squeeze if your fingers are touching any keys, because if you squeeze too hard, you can bend them. And just like recorder, if the key is bent and it's out of position, it doesn't cover the holes and it doesn't sound right, okay? So this flap needs to be down, okay? That's what we're going to try to overlap. So I'm going to grab my other piece very carefully. I'm looking at it to make sure I don't drop it. I'm going to find that piece, going to get my finger on the key that it needs to be on, pushing that up, okay? And then we're going to overlap those 2 pieces, okay? So you can see it here. You're not going to be able to see it when it overlaps. Maybe I can hold it right there. Now, if you find that these do not go together well, after you do this a few times, you'll figure out where to grab it, where the best place to grab it without bending anything is. But you might find that it doesn't go on there well, okay? And the way you have to do it is you have to twist back and forth a little bit until those line up. And when I look at it above and below, the little flap there that I'm moving up and down again is overlapping. And now when I push these lower keys for your right hand, it actually moves that piece. And that's what it's supposed to do. Once you get this all the way in and you don't see any cork in there, and those pieces are overlapped, then it can move everything it needs to move, okay? Because a lot of times when you're pushing these things down up here, it's operating something down here and vice versa. Push something down here, it's covering up something up here. So because you can play a lot more notes on a clarinet, so you need all these extra things to push, okay? Okay, so now find the thickest side that you have. Oh, just to notice, all of your holes now in the front, like on a recorder, line up. So if I hold it open like that, you can see 1, 2, 3 in your left hand, 4, 5, 6 in your right hand, okay? And then your pinkies are going to get to do some stuff. So they're going to get to do this and these, and then you're going to get to play these some in more advanced music later on, okay? So those are like side keys, we call those. So we're going to attach the bell, which is super easy. So find the bottom where your right hand goes. It's where I was going to say the least amount of keys, but that's actually not true. There's just one single key down here at the bottom. It's also the thicker side with cork. And the bell is the one that's shaped like a bell. Ding, ding, ding. You put that on. Doesn't really matter which way it's facing. What's cool about this is once this is together, you can just put that on sort of partially, put it against your chest or your stomach, and then grab the opposite side so you don't have to squeeze in the middle, and you can sort of just keep your hand there to guide it, but push from this side. And then you can watch it sort of, again, go all the way in so that it covers that cork. And that you can also twist in just by holding down here. That works just as well. I was going to say earlier, if you find that any of these pieces don't slide onto the cork well, you may have some cork grease as one of your accessories that could have come with your, I know this is backwards, isn't it? My phone is flipped around. Could have come with your instrument, so it could be in your case already, or this may be something you need to get separately. If you don't have any of this or it didn't come in your case, come with your instrument, chapstick actually works. It's not ideal, but you can use it for the time being until you get some cork grease. The cork grease will be a little bit better because it lubricates just a little bit better. You won't have to put it on as often. But you can put some of that on there, and the way you put it on is super easy. What I'll do is I'll do it on the mouthpiece, okay? So this piece is called the barrel, and it's just a piece that is sort of more narrow on the bottom than on the top. So this is going to link the rest of the clarinet to the mouthpiece, okay? So it kind of links the pieces together. So you put the thicker side on the body of the clarinet, and then your mouthpiece is going to end up going up on top there, okay? When you set this down on anything, you want to try not to set it on the keys, okay? It's going to probably touch some metal, but like this is a thumb rest, so that's not going to hurt if it touches that. These are keys, and if they get bent, it could potentially cause it to not play correctly. So I'm going to set it in my lap very carefully. I would not recommend you keep it in your lap when your hands are off of it. I'm doing this, but I've also got my lap really propped up to make sure it doesn't drop. So putting the cork grease on any cork that's sticky to put on to make it move around a little more smoothly. You can also use that same cork from your recorders. If you got your recorder last year, you would have gotten a little bit of cork grease, and you dip your pinky in it, and you can just put, basically draw a circle all the way around once. Do the same thing with this chapstick looking cork grease. Doesn't have to be a lot, you just need to draw a line around it basically. And then when you put it on, what you're going to do is twist it around, and it will spread itself out and really cover the entire thing, okay? I'm going to set it down to where the bell is on my chair so I can push down on it a little bit and it doesn't damage anything. And then I'm going to put this on it like this. I'm going to go ahead and pull off the ligature so that I can grab this, and then I'm going to grab here and hold it still and twist the mouthpiece on. And I'm just going to twist it around so that that grease spreads around, and now it moves really smoothly. But it's snug also, okay? That flat part needs to line up with your thumb key. Okay, so that's your left thumb key. Here's the flat part of the clarinet where the reed goes, flat part of the mouthpiece. So then I'm going to turn that around. That's the side that faces you. So when you're holding the clarinet the way you play it, that flat side is facing you. Okay. Now you're going to take your reed out of your mouth, or if you're lucky enough to have a little jar or glass like this, you pull it out. It's wet, so what I do is just kind of pull the excess wetness off of it so that it's still wet, and there's actually moisture inside it now because it's gotten to soak in a little bit. If it's been in your mouth, that moisture has soaked in as well. So you just wipe it off, and then what you're going to do is there is a flat side of your reed where it's cut all the way down, and then the side where it's cut only halfway down. So this is uncut, and the top part is cut, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to put the flat side of the reed to the flat side of that mouthpiece, okay? So they just go right against each other. And the thing is, they're almost the exact same shape up at the top here. So you want to get that as lined up evenly and perfectly as possible. They need to be right even with each other, okay? So the reed's not sticking out above it like that. It's also not the mouthpiece sticking out above the reed like that, right? You want it to be as even as possible, okay? So I use my hands to kind of get it in position, okay? And then I'm holding it in place in this hand, and I'm taking my ligature. You want to make sure the big side is on bottom, and then the screws will usually be on the right side, so in your right hand, okay? So that then I can take the screws on the reed side, remember on the flat side I said earlier, and it's going to go down past the cut of the reed. So remember where the cut part is up here, and then down here it's not cut. So you want to get the ligature down below that, and right now mine is below, okay? Those screws are going to sit right kind of on top of the reed. And what I find is that you have to sit there and adjust it, everything, back and forth. And you have to get the reed in place. And if it's not holding still and you're adjusting the ligature and you're getting it, you know, down below the cut and, you know, squarely on top of that you know, where the reed is sitting, then you have to just keep adjusting, right? So, and then you get better at it the more you do it. First time it may take forever. Once you get it in a good position, okay, and you've got it in place, then you can just give this a little bit of snugness, okay? You don't want to really bend it as hard as you can, because it'll pop the threading loose and inside here, and then it won't hold tight ever. It'll just keep turning and turning and turning, okay? So you just give it a little. Now this one goes a little further, and then once I feel it start to stop, I just give it one little snug twist. So it'll hold it in place. And then that should hold the reed in its spot, okay? And when you look at it, you want it to be as perfectly lined up as possible, okay? And you keep sort of getting it moist and wet. So I always sort of do that before I play a couple of times, just to make sure that I'm getting, again, moisture on there and keeping it on there. And then it's lined up, okay? The reed will be lined up with your thumb hole, the front side of the ligature, where the mouthpiece is cut, the mouthpiece part is cut here. So that'll be on the outside, lined up with all of the keys that you put your fingers on, okay? And again, we talked about how you're positioned just like on recorder. So you have your, I have my camera flipped around backwards, okay? So you're seeing, I think, a mirror image of me. So this would be your left hand, right? And then this would be your right hand. And that should work out pretty well. So you want to just get your hands in position. This is resting on top of your thumb. Your thumb is on this hole in the back. And then you're getting used to holding your fingers there. Not slanted, because that pulls them out of position. Keep your wrist down a little bit. And, you know, just get used to doing that first, okay? I'm going to make another video that includes a little bit of that, as well as making your first sound. So, you know, I'll talk more about the reed on that, because it's super important and it's something you have to get good at, okay? Hopefully you had time to watch this whole video. I know it's long. For clarinet, this is kind of a special deal, because that reed is different for you guys. You and the saxophones have to deal with this stuff. And if we had any oboe or bassoon players, they would have to deal with that as well, because they use reeds. So, part of the instrument, okay? Good luck with that. And then the next video will be more on playing, okay? All right, we'll see you next time.